Hey friends, back again. Got a great show for you today. One of my best buddies, Leo Beale, talking with us about life and spirituality as he has experienced it. And it's a joy and honor to have him. So look forward to this. Hope you enjoy it. As always, if you want to be on the show, contact me at seekingourspirit@gmail.com. seekingourspirit@gmail.com. Enjoy. So we're officially rolling. So I know we already said salute, but salute, brother.
Salud.
Thank you for doing this with me.
Sure.
Good to have you here.
Good to be here.
Took your ass long enough.
I just don't know that I have anything to say, but we'll see what happens.
That's not true.
We'll see what happens.
Not blowing smoke, but you were one of the first people I wanted to have on here because I disagree. So, yeah. So I'm excited to have you here, and I appreciate you doing it. So, I know we talked about this stuff ahead of time, but just sort of recapping like I do sometimes, just for anybody who ever listens. So, conversation, and you and I talked about this just a minute ago, actually, I guess. So,
over crawfish.
Over crawfish, yeah, which I now have over
all over me too.
Shorts. Yeah. But it was interesting. You brought up, so like the whole point of me doing this is sort of exploring with people, what the heck do we mean when we say spirit or spirituality? And you brought up a good point because you said, maybe it's a change in maybe it's more experiential, which that's actually exactly what I'm going for.
Okay.
So maybe I need to start. There goes Coco. So maybe I need to start putting that language in there of experiential versus spiritual. But that is what I mean.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So anyway, when you think about your life, is there something like when you look at your childhood, or what would be like the earliest quote unquote spiritual or experiential moment that you can pull out? And is it church related? Is it outside of church? Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so I'll let you get your first. So it's kind of funny, the household that I was raised in, my mom will tell you she's very religious, and she'll talk about religion a lot, but she doesn't really go to church. And growing up, we didn't go to church that often because it was just so much to get everything headed the right direction. My dad will tell you that he's less religious probably, and I think he's more religious. He is much more serious about it. He goes to church every single Sunday now. He teaches Sunday school and has for years, and he takes it very seriously.
It's interesting, but he would say he's not religious.
Yeah, but I just don't think it doesn't, in his mind. So I was going to say that I feel the same way. In my mind, it doesn't play a huge role, but it's always there. Mm-hmm. And so I gave you the story one time that when I was going through Inquirer's class at Ascension with Father Howard, he asked us to draw a timeline of our, I don't know exactly how he termed it, but our experience with God or our relationship with God through the years, starting as a child and across. And people would, in college they had it really low, and then first child they had it really high, and then divorce they had it really low, and then, first grandchild had it really high. In mine, I was like, I wasn't trying to be funny, but I drew a straight line, straight across the board, the middle of the board. And so to me, God is present always. And I don't think there are times when there are surely, the children and things like that obviously make you, introspective more. But I don't see my relationship with God or my spirituality or my whatever having peaks and valleys. It's pretty constant for me. Mm-hmm. And when I say that, it makes me think that I'm saying I'm more religious than some, and I'm not. I'm actually probably less religious than some. And I know I'm very certain that I'm a sinner, and my only hope is grace. So,
yeah, well, that's the same for all of us. Yeah, but that brings up even just the topic right there of like, people make this distinction between, it's a very popular thing to say now, like, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual.
Yeah.
And even that,
it's the same to me.
what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Right. So,
it means, what I think it means is they're more introspective at times, and they're more narcissistic at times, is what I would guess what they mean.
That's an interesting way to put it. Yeah. I mean, because at the same time, people could say, I mean, you could also look at it in terms of like, there are people who are extremely religious, very faithful, always at church or whatever, but do they ever have quote unquote spiritual experiences?
Yeah.
Right. So there is sort of I think to your point about experiential, there's a difference.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I identify with what you're saying. I mean, I actually I never thought of drawing my line that way, but I definitely, in fact, I find it interesting that when I share this in groups or in other settings, similar conversations, and I sort of say, I've just always had this constant awareness of this thing we call God in my life.
Yeah, me too.
And I always find it odd that that's not everyone's story.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, really?
Well, I mean, honestly, I was like, you know me, I'm a little bit of a smart ass at times, and I sometimes, try to push the envelope a little bit. And so I had to tell Father Howard, I said, I'm not trying to be funny here, but this is my line.
Right.
And he got it. He understood. But I mean, everybody else's line looked like a a heart monitor.
Sure.
And mine was straight. And I think that's because, and maybe I look at it differently, is he's always there. Maybe sometimes I don't show up so well, but
yeah. Well, that's a good way to look at it. It's also like, okay, well, God may always be there, and we may always be aware of God, but there's definitely, as you said, like maybe you're more introspective about it, or there's just times in our life where, like, I'll call it like an inbreaking of the spirit, like where something just hits you over the head, or something happens in your life, and it's like, oh, clearly the presence of God is in this moment.
Yeah.
So,
and I believe that's true, and I can tell you times that I know for sure God was present and acted.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool to know. I mean, I don't think a lot of people actually feel that.
There are people who go through life who never feel that.
Yeah.
There are religious people who go through faith life and have never felt that.
So interesting, you kind of following up on what you said before, is Father Howard taught me a lot about. So I was raised Baptist. I went to Presbyterian schools. I'm married to Methodists. I've kind of had the spectrum, and we ended up going to Ascension because we tried a couple of the Methodist churches out in town, and the fit wasn't there. The fit wasn't exactly what we were looking for. And literally, in Leslie's way, she researched, and so she looked at this really pretty church up on the hill. Yeah, strange, right? So she saw this pretty church up on the hill, and she said, I'm going to read about this. And then she had me read about it. And that was really kind of our, the website, it described kind of how we perceive and interact with religion. So we're like, okay, we'll give this a shot. And not to get too far off track, but we showed up the first day, and it was Amy Morehouse's first day preaching. She was a deacon at the time, and it was her first time ever to take the pulpit, and she was nervous. I mean, gosh almighty, she read every word. She didn't look up. Her voice was breaking the whole time.
We love you, Amy. I've been there.
But the message was amazing. Yeah. And but everybody started talking about this guy that was coming the next week. This guy that was coming the next week. It was Father Howard. So we said, well, might as well go back and see one more time. I mean, Leslie liked the fact there was a female in the pulpit. And obviously it worked out real well. But it's funny that a lot of my perception of the Episcopal Church and being Episcopalian comes from Father Howard, because he's the one who introduced me to it. Sure. And so he was like, because in the Baptist church, we take communion once a quarter. And we do it in our seats. And you show up and you see the wine in the little holes in the wood in the pew in front of you, and so okay, today's the day we do communion. And so I was like, y'all do that every week? Really?
That sure takes a long time.
And we get up and we go down to the rail, and holy mackerel. Yeah. And so I was like, I got to tell you, Father Howard, the first couple of times that I did it here, I didn't really have much of a connection. I was really more worried about doing the right thing, putting my knees in the right place and holding my hands correctly and all these things. And so it was really not a godly experience at all. Yeah. And he said, just keep going. Yeah. Just keep going. Because he says, I'll tell you the truth, same for me. Yeah. He says, you don't always show up the way you should, but just show up. Yeah. And when you do, then all of a sudden it becomes really powerful. And so I've had that experience as well, is, kind of going through the motions at the rail, and then sometimes just really just like, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a great lesson, and it's a common lesson, at least in like the Episcopal culture, right? I mean, we sometimes will trivialize that and say, fake it till you make it.
Right.
But it's true, right? And there is something true, deeply true and beautiful in just, I think probably universally in people's spiritual lives of like, just keep showing up.
Yeah.
Just keep showing up, yeah.
Well, when he said those words, I took it to mean keep going to the rail.
Yeah.
But what he meant was keep showing up.
Right.
Keep being available.
Right.
Because you never know.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So, sorry if that feels like a pause to anybody who's listening. The crawfish went through me. So.
And before we go to the next stage, I do want to say, in case Amy does ever happen to listen to this, we really loved watching Amy's development while she was at Ascension. And by the time she left, I'm not sure she wasn't giving the best homilies of the batch.
Yeah.
She was really, really fantastic. And being able to watch that from day one to the day she left was pretty,
that's awesome.
pretty cool. Yeah.
No, I that's what. Yeah, first seeing anybody first time in the pulpit.
Yeah.
Like,
And her message was great. It really was a good message.
Sure.
She was just clearly just frightened to death.
Yeah.
And I wanted to just go up there and hug her. It's like, it'll be all right.
Gosh, man, and for someone like me who literally avoided my call to ministry out of fear of public speaking.
Yeah.
Purely.
Yeah.
Like I still shudder thinking about how intense I felt in those first times.
Yeah.
Getting up there. Not to derail it, I used to make poor Carla at Ascension. We would come Saturday night.
And you'd rehearse.
And I would preach it to her.
Yeah.
Sitting out there in the pew.
That's funny. I never knew that.
Yeah. Horrified.
Well, you both figured it out. You both do pretty well right now. Both of you have a really good way of making it very personal and laying yourself bare. And it's just very honest and real, which is cool.
Yeah, thanks, man. Something I was thinking about, though, it's interesting because and if you wanted to continue with, like, show up, but, like, it's sort of ironic because, right, you say, okay, so this timeline, God's always there, which I identify with because I'm the same way, and yet it almost sounds like, and you're talking just about coming, like, to the Episcopal Church and, like, meeting Father Howard, that you could almost call that in your life, like a quote-unquote spiritual high point.
No question about it.
Yeah.
No question about it. So my relationship with the religion was strained my whole life because there was so much predetermination and so much I'm sorry, there's so much bullshit connected with all of it. And when Father Howard explained to me that, one of the three tenets of Episcopalianism is the three-legged stool is reason. Yeah. I was just like, I've been waiting my whole life for this.
Yeah.
Because I can read the Bible and I get it. But and this is, some people consider this completely sacrilegious, but I believe the Bible was written by human beings and they're flawed. And I think there were reasons certain things were written the way they were written that have nothing to do with God. And the fact that this religion allows me to have those thoughts freely is pretty cool.
Right. Yeah, something we take for granted, huh?
Yeah. I don't. So you've never had that experience in the churches I grew up in. You were not told to read the Bible and think about it. You were told to read the Bible and follow it to the T.
Well,
and then
understand it the way we tell you to understand it.
Right. And then the bastardized version of their interpretation of it. Correct. Yeah. Right. And so I really do think that's what really hurts a lot of religions is that we're too smart for that. Mm-hmm. And I've really felt, ever since we started coming to the Episcopal Church, I really felt the freedom to kind of experience God in the way that makes sense to me. Because if it doesn't make sense to you, you really aren't going to experience it fully. Mm-hmm. I think. I got a lot of opinions. You got to understand that.
Yeah, I didn't know that about you. So to back up a little bit, though, okay, so granted, understand and identify with the awareness, constant awareness of, like, there is this thing we call God, this higher power in our life, and we just know that that's there, which is a beautiful gift. Are there any points in your childhood and your upbringing, in your teenage years, is there anything that stands out that you would say was poignant in a spiritual sense, an experiential sense?
So, Well, first of all, I got to apologize. My voice is not good because of the pollen, and then I've now touched my eyes 3 or 4 times with my fingers that I should ate crawfish with, so now my eyes are watering.
Right.
So we may go downhill significantly.
Crying because that's better for the show.
Well, yeah, it's painful. Is what it is.
Can I get you something?
But so yeah, I mean, I had the same experience that everyone's had. Like, God, how are you letting this happen? Or, even to the point where when you're really, really frustrated, you're like, man, God would never let this happen. So what am I misunderstanding here? But beyond that, I think everybody has those. So I'm not going to really count those as spiritual moments, because those are really just kind of me wiping away my spirituality and experiencing it more just as a...
I mean, like in a time of tragedy or...
Yeah, right.
Or whatever.
Or something just, you can't imagine this many things can go wrong at one time.
Yeah.
But, in the end, that's not at all what it was. But, there are a couple of times where I really felt God closely. It's kind of funny. So, again, my growing up in the Baptist church I struggled with it a lot. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. And so I was being told, basically, that it was, it's kind of like what we do. It's time to go to the choirs class. I was being told, it's time to, accept God as your Savior and to get baptized, because in the Baptist church you don't baptize until you're, a teenager typically. And so I really just kind of spent a lot of time in my room thinking about it and praying about it, and like, is this even real? What is all of this? And does it really make any difference that I stand up in front of 400 people and say this and I literally get pushed underwater? It just didn't make a lot of sense to me that's what God really wanted to focus his time on. Mm-hmm. And so I asked God for a sign. I said, I want you to, if this is right for me, tell me, show me. Mm-hmm. And, that's a dangerous game to play, because, often that's not how God plays it. And so you're not going to get the satisfaction that you want. But something happened, and I'm not going to say that I saw God or anything like that. But, not the first time. It was after months of this conversation with God. I did have this kind of electrifying feeling. I can't really describe it, but it was like at least part of what I was being told was true. And then my overwhelming sense was, but you're not going to get anything out of it if you don't put into it. Mm-hmm. And so lean into it, see what you can do. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, okay, that's more of a palpable sign than I was expecting, so I'm going to go with this. And I don't think that was
That was like 10, 12?
13, 14. Yeah. So, but I wouldn't consider that. I didn't. It's not a big bright line moment for me.
It's interesting. Something that I talk about a lot, that comes out a lot in these conversations that I'm having with people, and I think I talk about it in ministry a lot, is like what I've seen over the years of working with people in their spiritual lives is there are I call them languages, so ways that I tend to see that God talks to different people.
Yeah,
and it's like these categories. Like some are audible and some are, visions, and some are exactly what you just said. Yeah. It's just this. It's a sense.
It's a euphoria.
It's kind a knowing.
Yeah. So
that lines up totally with me, and I see it.
Well, that's good. I'm not crazy. It's good.
No. Well, and what fascinates me, and it's actually part of the inspiration of doing these conversations with people, is like I love so much to hear what are those languages for different people.
Yeah.
And for some people, it's like they've shifted. Like they might have 2 or 3 of them. They might have one their whole life. They might have 2 or 3 of them. They might have gone from when they're a kid, this was the way they experienced God, and then later, this is the way. So that lines up perfect. Yeah. But
less kind of ethereal than that is is very clear that God had a hand in getting us to ascension. I don't really know how that happened, because that was not on our radar. Mm-hmm. We knew nothing about the Episcopal Church. Mm-hmm. Nothing. Literally nothing. I'd heard a few people call it Catholic Light, but I didn't even really know what that meant, right, to be honest with you. And so the fact that we ended up there, we've been there now as long as we have, is amazing. It's just truly amazing. Mm-hmm. There's no way that was not meant to be. There's no way that God didn't have a hand in that. Mm-hmm. So that's not what I consider, one of these big, lightning hit, and I saw a vision, but it's clear that we were shepherded.
Yeah.
Clear.
Yeah.
Clear as a bell.
Well, I also think, this is a larger conversation, but like, I think to some extent, I don't know, I think this conversation fits within this larger framework of like, what is it? What is not spiritual, right? It's really
that's kind of
a choice of perspective.
That's really where I come down. And so, when you told me kind of the topic of this, I was kind of like, I'm not sure that I have a bunch of moments that I can share with you, because it's just kind of always there. And it's more about how I show up than how he shows up. And it's more about whether I can slow my brain down and focus on what's important and kind of take out all of my bullshit and be real for a minute. Then good things happen.
Well, that's an interesting angle at it, because we could do this and say, so where are those times in your life where you did that?
Yeah.
Where you showed up.
Yeah.
And more clearly experienced these things.
And I've had other experiences too. So I spent a lot of time internationally, a lot of time in Europe, but also a lot of time in North Africa and the Middle East. And that's when you become more religious. When you're in when you're in danger, God plays a bigger part in your life, and that's solely that's the sinner in us right there. That's that's when we need Him, not when He needs us. But there have been times when I've been in a tight jam, and at one time particularly that I really didn't know what the ending was going to be. It could have gone many different ways, and I thought generally it was going to be okay, but it also could have broken really badly, really quickly. And I'd have been in a place where nobody really knew where I was, and then nobody knew where to look for me. So, and I was by myself, and I didn't know what the next move was. Didn't know what the plans were for me. And then I just all of a sudden got a very overwhelming sense of calm. Just that it's going to be okay. And I don't really know how to describe that. I don't know that I felt it was God at the moment, but it was definitely a very powerful force calming me. And hell, it might have been a defense mechanism. I might have been trying to convince myself that's what was happening, but I felt it. I thought it was real.
Yeah.
So I would consider that one of those spiritual moments. And what's funny is, so when I got back,
it worked out, obviously.
Yeah, it worked out. Yeah, I'm here. When I got back, I was ushering, I think, and I was standing there in the front, just kind of hanging out. And this lady that I didn't know from Adam, didn't know her from Adam, came up and said, "Glad you're back safe." I was like, "How do you know what's going on?" And it turns out my wife had put me on the prayer list.
On the Daughters of the King prayer list.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is for people who don't know, is a private, confidential list. I think she actually told me to put them on the list, and I remember telling them, which is a confidential prayer list that these women dedicate their days to praying over these things that they may have zero information about, but they commit to praying for this private list that priests feel comfortable sharing with them, that they're not going to put on the public list. Yeah.
And so that was really cool that it kind of closed the loop. Like, oh.
Yeah.
That's what that was.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite stories, man.
Yeah.
For real. You've told me that personally before. That's one of my favorite stories. And you know what is, you're exactly right. And I had actually forgotten that second part, because that second part seals the deal, right?
Yeah.
That's where it's like, whoa,
right.
Wait a minute.
Well, I literally had no idea that was happening.
Yeah.
None.
Yeah.
My wife, without my permission, put me on the prayer list.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool moment that, like you say, I could say whatever that was that night.
Yeah.
But then when a lady I don't know grabs my arm, she's 21.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. Yeah.
Well, it also proves that I'm pretty hard-headed, so God has to kind of he has to hit me over there at the club to get my attention. But that did get my attention. So
yeah. That's a great one, man. Yeah. Oof. Yeah, and what's awesome about that one too is like a whole other topic in this world of conversation is that, right? Like power of prayer. Like, what
Yeah.
is that? You know what I mean?
Oh gosh,
Like,
I know for sure the power of prayer works.
yeah.
I have experienced it in my life, in my family's life. Yeah, that's real. That's completely real.
Yeah. What are there stories from that you feel comfortable sharing?
Well, I mean, and just, I had a cousin that had a brain tumor. And, I mean, it was really touch and go. And we weren't really sure how this was going to end up. And I put him on the prayer list at church, which, I mean, that's just so unlike me. That's not something I would normally do. And I know there was thousands of people across the country praying for this kid. And the doctor went in and was like, oh, we had it wrong. It's going to be totally fine. So, yeah, there was a tumor and it was needed surgery, but it wasn't the kind of tumor they thought it was, and it wasn't in the place they thought it exactly was. And I mean, kid's totally fine. Totally fine. And, I mean, the doctors were convinced they had it right the first time. And so it's just, that was, in my mind, that was a miracle.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, those are...
And I have a real clear sense of how I know prayer works, but I'm not sure I can come up with the stories today. But I know I have some. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things that it's just there. I know for sure it's true.
Yeah. The hard work, I agree, and I feel the same. The hard part is when you know similar stories and it doesn't work out, and it's just having the faith and the confidence to say, "What? I don't know."
Yeah, and not the crazy thing about believing in God is that bad things do happen, and even some of the most what you consider religious people experience tragedy. Yeah. And it's obviously something that I'm going to ask a lot of questions about later. but I have a sense that it all happens for a reason, and I don't think our actions can affect that. I don't think that we can be good enough to avoid that or bad enough to deserve that. I think things just happen, and I don't know. This is where religion gets hard, right?
Yeah.
Because there's no answers.
Well, and that's why I love again I like hearing about people's because it's what you experience versus like pontificating about theological stuff. So baptism was a moment. Are there, when you look back?
Well, actually, baptism, there was no moment whatsoever.
In the baptism.
It was right. It was the decision to do it. It was the commitment.
Cool.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to underline here is the going underwater and going in front of the church was absolutely nothing moment for me, and it was actually just I thought was silly.
Yeah.
It was some outward manifestation of me trying to tell people how good I was, and the time that mattered was me alone in my bedroom. It wasn't in front of the church.
I've never thought about that before, but that is one perhaps benefit of like doing infant baptism. You cut out all that,
right? 100%.
All that pressure.
Well, and all that teen angst and everything that you can bring to it.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Now, did you experience around that? Because the way you put it into words was that it was sort of God saying like just check it out, just do it, just bring yourself to it. Actually, similarly to Father Howard's message to you.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So did you, outside of the performative baptism part, was there a time that you like, in your way of looking at it, that you like you were showing up, you were bringing yourself to that relationship, like whether that be church or be internally on your own or?
So no. Again, that was during a period of time that I was really struggling with religion. And even though I did get baptized and accepted God and all these things, it wasn't, a daily part of my life because that's not the rhythm that my family was in. By the same token, it was interesting to me that after accepting God, I didn't feel that much different. I think I was already there. And I needed, for some reason, I needed somebody to tell me that I was there, but I think I was already there.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was actually it just came to my mind. It's like, what I'm really curious about is, okay, it sounds like it was always there.
Yeah, it was.
And then the way, though, you described your family is that it wasn't like they were particularly quote unquote religious. So like,
there was always an undertone there. I mean, we didn't pray before meals and things like that, but but there's always an undertone there. I mean, we always went to Easter, we always went to Christmas. I mean, we were those Christians. But like I said, my dad takes it very seriously, and just the kind of the sober realism that he brings to it when he talks about it, was very attractive to me. Yeah. And so, it was.
And that's sort of a Southern. I mean, we all, when you grow up in the South,
can't avoid it.
It's in your family. It's in it, whether you go to church or not.
It's baked in for sure.
So maybe that's part of it. But I'm sure, like, if we talk to your siblings, they wouldn't all characterize it as that same.
That's probably true.
Like awareness of God.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've got some kind of OCD or something. I mean, I sit at night when I'm by myself. I sit and rewind my day, and I kind of relive everything that I did and everything I said and all the mistakes that I made. And when you do that, I think that in and of itself kind of is a spiritual thing, because you're kind of judging yourself on this standard of good and bad and whatever. I mean, and
it's actually a very ancient spiritual practice.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ignatian daily examine.
I'm deep water, man. But I literally do that every day.
Yeah.
And so, maybe that's where God shows up for me, because I judge kind of how I acted all day based upon this standard. Yeah. And I can tell you right now, it's an epiphany for me. Is I don't look at it as the God standard, as the Bible standard. But now that I think about it, that might be kind of what I'm applying to it.
Like how you acted out of love versus not.
Yeah.
Yeah, just FYI, and for anybody who listens to this, I mean, for real, and I would love for you to look at it and just see, because that's weird that you're like naturally doing something that is like something that is taught for so long in the church. So St. Ignatius, like he has lots of practices, but he's like, if you do nothing else, do this, and it's the examine. So you examine your day, but you're sort of like inviting God to do that with you. So you look at your day, and you basically do the same thing. You say, where's the places where I can give thanks and celebrate and give glory to God? Where are the places that I can say sorry for and ask God's forgiveness and help with? And then you look towards the next day. Some people do it at the beginning of their day, either way. And then they say, all right, God, help me, walk me through, be with me in these days. Yeah.
So you basically just gave me some homework, because now, in addition to what I do, I'm now going to have to bring it to a thankfulness standard as well, which is not currently my practice.
Yeah, I heard the judging words.
Right.
Yeah. We can do a little, of course, this is the Episcopal way, a little less of the judgy.
Right, exactly. Man, I love it. I'm in 100%. Pretty church up on the hill. I got it.
Okay, well, so let's go after.
Okay.
Like anything else highlight wise, like teenage years. So you get baptized, whatever. Just life in general, family, personal circumstances, church circumstances, spiritual life, whatever. Like teenage years, college, early family life, whatever.
Yeah. So again, I mean, I don't have these wonderful, exciting stories, but I mean, there are times in my life where I probably wasn't as good of a person as I could have been. I got pretty selfish in college, and started believing some of my own bullshit, and so I probably wasn't the person that I definitely was not the person that I wanted to be. But in the background, there was always it was there, is to do the right thing, because I stopped doing this, do the right thing, treat this person better. So, yeah, I mean, I think my spirituality is very boring, actually. I think it's very.
You keep saying that, but you have great stories and moments.
No, but I really do. I think it's just there. Yeah. It's not something that is things that stand out for me. I have a couple of cool moments where I kind of felt the hand of God, but in those moments, if I'm being honest with myself, I wanted to feel the hand of God, so I was welcoming that to be there, and maybe I manifested it myself, but. It's just always there, and when my wife and I, and we've experienced some tragedy, and I've experienced tragedy prior to this marriage, and I never really got to the point where I was in danger of losing my faith. That was really never on the table for me. And I've seen people that it's very much on the table for them. They're very struggling with it. Like, I've given so much to God, now look what He's doing to me. I can't believe this. And there are always times where you wonder, how is this happening to me? But I've never come close to losing my faith. I think my faith is different than a lot of people's faith. I think I bring way more of that third-legged stool in, a lot of that reason in, and maybe that's, just justification. But I don't know. I've lived a pretty lucky life, a pretty full life, and I know God is with me the whole time. But I don't have any like huge. I was not called to the ministry at age 30 or whatever else. Yeah, see, I told you.
Yeah,
it's a boring podcast.
Here's the judging thing coming back. I think the baptism story, the sort of wherever you were, and DOK story, and the and just conversation around that difference of like always having a consciousness about this thing we call God is. I think you're completely wrong. I think those are all great stories.
Yeah.
I think those are extremely powerful.
What are your stories? Maybe if you give me one, it'll help me think of another.
I should be more prepared for people to ask me this.
I'm a lawyer, right?
Yeah. Actually, similarly like you, I've just had that presence in my life always, which, as I already said today, like in later life, I've learned that's not everyone's story. Mm-hmm. So I take that as a real gift.
That's what I think my biggest job as a parent is to have my kids have that same understanding.
Which is a lot more difficult than.
Yeah, I don't think I have any say in it. Right. Is the problem.
Right.
But if I can just share it enough, maybe, or just live it enough, maybe, or just talk about it a little bit, because it would really make me sad if they don't have that experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I definitely hear that, and I've got the other weirdness of like clergy.
Yeah, sure.
Parent overlay.
Sure.
On that, which makes that dynamic even more challenging.
More difficult. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, my kids know I'm a sinner, so that's
Oh, that part's no question.
They figure I've gotten through with something. They just got to put a name on it.
That part's no. Yeah. Yeah. I it's funny. I would have a lot of the same language, I think, as you would. Like, there's just a constant awareness and presence, and I can name things. I feel like I'm saying the same thing you're saying. Like, I can name places here and there. Call story, but that wasn't some overwhelming. I didn't hear God's voice.
Yeah.
It's just sort of my lifeline.
Do some people hear God's voice?
Yeah. Rob Travis did.
I can't even wrap
my
mind around
it. Yeah. I don't know what God's voice is.
Yeah.
They hear it audibly, though, whatever the message is.
That's foreign to me, but I'm not saying it's not true.
I literally was reciting the Nicene Creed every day. I didn't know it. Like, I wasn't doing that intentionally. I was walking in Boone, North Carolina, walking from the class to my dorm. It was the apartments. And one day I realized, and there was a lot of other stuff, like I'd been having these big conversations with this professor. I wish I could track him down. I don't even know his name. He called himself a soft atheist. And he would just sit there. It was a beautiful gift. He would sit there for hours with me. What I realized I was doing now is like trying to work out, like,
you
believe this stuff. And he would just rap with me. And we'd just go back and forth, challenge, It was great. And then I caught myself reciting the Nicene Creed, and when I was like, what are you doing? Then when I asked that question, it was like everything of my past life sort of lined up, and I saw like, oh, you're asking these questions because you're trying to see if you actually, in good conscience, can say you believe this stuff. Mm-hmm. And everything sort of like, when it all lined up, it was like, oh, this has all been pointing this way.
So that's not a soft story at all. That's a strong story.
Well, it's the same thing I said usually, yeah.
Fair enough.
But yeah. There's things like that.
It's funny how God talks to me in different ways. So one of the most powerful things that happened was, we recite the baptismal covenant whenever a child is baptized, and our church at the time was struggling with gay marriage and just a lot of things. That the Tea Party movement was strong. It was one of those things where individual freedoms was being challenged, yet being championed, and I think championed in the wrong way, and people trying to force some people to live a certain lifestyle and others to not live a certain lifestyle, and it was just chaos. And our church was in a little bit of chaos too, and some little baby who got baptized, and we read the baptismal covenant. And the line that sticks out to me the most, and probably the entire Book of Common Prayer, is, "I will respect the dignity of every human being." And I'm sitting there going, we got gays and gay haters, and we have people that want to, you can't have gay marriage because it will ruin the, all this stuff going on. And I was like, man, if that doesn't just solve it.
Yeah, it says it right there.
I mean, just that one phrase, it's not even a sentence, it's a phrase. That one phrase, if people would just read it and live it, all this stuff would just end today.
Yeah.
And so that's literally, that's the 8 words or whatever in the Book of Common Prayer that's most important to me.
Yeah, man, I hear you there. That's one of those you lift up over and over and over again, especially around election time, right? I'm like, remember not just who you are, remember whose you are.
Yeah.
And this is the things you promise all the time.
Well, and just, it's just so simple. Respect the dignity of every human being.
Don't gotta be your best friend.
Don't have to like it. Don't have to anything else. You just got to respect them to have their space. And, if you look at my life, I'm supposed to be a gun-toting Trumpster, don't tread on me, and I'm just not.
Right.
I'm just not. I think I'm too intelligent for that, number one. And number two, if you're really living into what the Bible says, if you're really living into what we're supposed to be doing, that's it right there. It's just to love and respect the dignity of other people. And
let that be your motivator. Right?
Yeah. So that was a spiritual moment. So when, literally, Leslie is much more liberal than I am, and we have these discussions all the time, and it's always back and forth, and our church is hurting. There are people that have been there forever that are threatening not to come back if we perform a gay marriage and all these things. And then it's just like lightning struck when I read that. And I was, that's one of those things that's perfunctory. You just kind of read it, and you often are not even thinking about what you're saying, and half the time you've memorized it, so you're saying it out of memory.
Yeah.
And the fact that just the world stopped.
Right.
And that just hit me over the head. That's got to be a spiritual moment, right?
That moment, that day, during that context.
Well, it just simplified everything for me. It's like, now I don't have to think about it in terms of gay and straight. I don't have to think about it in terms of black and white. I don't have to think about it's just people, man, just dignity and people.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
So so I know I got some. I just got to think. See, you said the Nicene Creed, and immediately I went to the baptismal covenant. So I'm going to start asking you questions.
Yeah, that's all good, man.
But I really did, and that was to me. And now I look, whenever I see a thing hanging over the rail there at the choir, because I know that means we're gonna have a baptism. I'm like, yes, yeah. Whenever there's a banner, I'm like, I get to say that one more time.
Yeah.
Which is a very cool thing. And there's some other moments I distinctly remember when Logan and Blake were smaller, and they would go back to children's church. And I don't know if you know, but Blake's a little bit wild. And so I would always be nervous him coming back into church. So I'd always try to meet him there in the vestibule, to try to, at least make eye contact with him so the fear of God may be there. And whenever it was a baptism, they would run to the font.
Right.
And man, just seeing the wonder in those kids' eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is a beautiful space, and they all just surround around it.
Yeah. And they hang on every word, and if something goes wrong, they're always helping the priest, and it's one of those spaces where that's not just a marble bowl with some water in it.
Yeah.
There's just no way it is.
Yeah. And I think that there's sort of circling back to something we said earlier, like and words like that in our liturgy, in the Book of Common Prayer, when you do try to lift that out into your daily life and live that way, to respect every being, really extrapolate that out into just like creation.
Yeah.
Right? To like respect the dignity of all things created, right, by God.
Thanks. You just gave me some more homework, but okay. Go ahead.
Well, love comes out of that. I think. If you're respecting things, if you're caring for things because you respect it, right? If you respect something, then you have to care for it because you respect it,
right?
And then love comes out of that, and then, I don't know. I just think, and then all of a sudden that conversation around like, well, what isn't spiritual comes back in. Like, what isn't?
Well, so that's kind of where I'm sitting here right in the middle of this thing. We probably ought to do this again now that I've had this time to thought, because that is it. Is all these little things that happen every day are spiritual, and they keep me closer to God, which is good.
Yeah.
And then, and what I love is when I go back and recreate my day and I realize all the times that I failed that.
Mm-hmm. And yet that failure is okay, right?
Yeah, it is okay, because I have an awareness that it's a failure and I'll have a desire to do better.
Right.
The day I quit desiring to do better, that's going to be a problem, but...
Well, and hopefully an awareness of like, just like in that steadfastness, like I know, just like you, I know God's always been there.
Yeah.
In the failures, in the, so I know it's okay.
Yeah.
Which again, not everybody has.
Yeah.
It's you asked for stories, so I'm going to tell one now, just because you were talking about the difference in like coming to the rail.
Yeah.
And like, your experience of that. This is one of my favorite stories to tell. And it's a great example of like, one of the big debates in the church is about open table. Like, are we really going to require people to be baptized before they?
I have a real problem with that, by the way.
Well, historically and theologically, it makes sense, but like, so it's hard. But this is where this experience decided that for me. We had a family. I'm not going to say their names, or whatever, at Ascension when I was there. He was atheist. Mother and children came to church, and so he it was really a beautiful thing. He would come just to support them.
That's good.
He'd come sit in the pews.
Yeah.
He'd do whatever. He would even come with them to the altar rail, and he would just get a blessing. I don't know if he was baptized. He was from another country, but he I get this call. I didn't see this part happen, but I get this call Monday, and he goes, I got to meet with you. I got to talk with you. I'm like, what? Are you okay? He's like, yeah, I'm okay. We got to talk. Fine, go meet him, whatever. And he looks at me, and I mean, he's got tears in his eyes, and he's just like, can't hold himself together. And he goes, please tell me that every single time you take communion, that's how you feel. Because he had gone and taken without permission. I think that was the key. He wasn't baptized. And he took communion, and he had this...
He had the moment.
Overwhelming... It was a conversion experience for him. I ended up baptizing him as an adult. Yeah, see, I forgot that. That would have made the story, but I forgot. Of course, I baptized him at the Easter Vigil, which is the first big celebration of Easter Saturday night, as an adult, out of that experience. And that, to me, sealed the deal,
So your stories are better than mine, clearly.
No.
But that's, I mean, I don't have quite that reaction, but, I mean... Literally, and this is going to make me sound like a bad person, but 9 out of 10 times, I'm more worried about, that person went to the wrong place, and
dude, I get it. Think about what I'm thinking about.
That Eucharistic minister just wiped her nose, stuff, It's just like, I'm watching all these things and all the pageantry of it, and how, and that's one thing. We used to run that church like a boss. I mean, we used to run communion and all things like that like a boss. It's a free for all.
Okay, now, all right.
You can swing down from a rope from the choir, and I mean whatever. and the inward of it in me is just mad. But 1 in 10, 1 in 9, 1 in 8, 1 in 15, whatever it is, I leave the rail in tears.
Yeah.
So that's a real thing too, and I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's just I'm just so broken and so in pain that it's just I want it to happen, or whether it's just God saying, "Hey, stick with me. I'm here." I don't know what it is, but it happens.
Yeah,
that's a really cool story. That he that's a conversion moment. I mean,
he just wanted to take it, and he just. mean, I can't describe it. He's like,
that's great.
Are you telling me every time you take communion you feel that way? I was like, I wish I could tell you that.
Okay, let's let you in on this. No. but thank God every once in a while I do.
Yeah.
I don't even know how you can when you're up there performing it. I mean, I would want to once a quarter go to a different church with a hat on and not a collar on and just take communion.
It's taken years. I mean, now I've been doing it for 15 years.
Yeah.
So like, at least twice a Sunday for 15 years, maybe 3 times a Sunday, maybe noonday Eucharist in the weekdays, maybe home Eucharist.
Do you ever just get to go to the rail and let somebody else? I guess not. If you're there, you're working.
When I go to church on vacation,
we've done that before.
I don't go. I'm sorry to tell everyone I don't go to church.
We don't usually either, but when we have a house up in Highlands, we did, and we actually started going to church, especially around Christmas time up there. That's funny. Yeah. So one time that I've had spiritual moments, and clearly God was present was when like at the Brotherhood retreats or whatever, and we actually, I'm not good with the terminology, but we like Eucharize each other. I mean, what do you? Yeah, you actually hand it to the next guy, and and you take, and then you're the Eucharistic minister for the next guy. Yeah. Those are pretty powerful.
It's powerful, yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's taken time, but now I have those moments actually more frequently because I can be less nervous about the performative part. It's such a part of me. So now all of a sudden
you get to experience it again.
It becomes the spiritual part, which I guess is probably the intent, all along. But that took me a long time because, as I said before, I didn't want to be in front of people. I don't want to speak in front of people.
Yeah.
But there are those inbreakings still. Yeah. What else? Anything else? We're about an hour in. Anything else you can think that you would name from your life? That's. I mean, I don't just knowing your story and knowing your life. I would say, and you let me say this. You don't have to even go into any of this, but I think from the bird eye view, like even just the broad stroke of like. I think anybody who goes through a marriage that doesn't work for whatever reason, whatever happens, that's tragedy. That's heartache. That's whatever. And then I personally, from the outside, seeing the life that you all have built, Leslie and your family, and of course, your children from your prior marriage, to me, that's a beautiful, big sort of God picture, right?
And so, I mean, I don't know if you even know the story.
I just know some details of there was a lot of ups and downs on a lot of that.
Yeah.
Times where different profession, different whatever.
Yeah, there are definitely ups and downs, and the whole first marriage ended basically because of the death of a child. I don't know if you even knew. Do you know that I tell you that? Yeah. And so we just approached that in a very different way, my ex-wife and I. And even though we had another child, which was clearly an attempt to repair the hurt and the damage, that was just not going to work. That was hopelessly broken, and I considered a tremendous failure and a tremendous shortcoming. But I think you're right. Is what the grace that I've been given and the blessings that I've been given since then are pretty amazing. And we've had tragedy within this marriage as well. I mean, we had numerous miscarriages, that were pretty far along. It is because we both had a blood clotting factor that we didn't know we had. When we found out, we could take a blood thinner and everything works out fine. But so there was that, and then I had a business failure. I bought a business that once I had a forensic accountant look at it and kind of examine the books and say, how is this happening? He's like, well, the books that you bought this business based on are totally fabricated. There's nothing real about any of it. And, that's a pretty low moment because I put pretty much everything I had into that business to start it or to buy it, and it didn't work. And so, pretty low moments. And I'm talking about as recently as 07, 08.
Yeah, that was about when I met you.
Yeah. Yeah, I was actually pretty broken at that point, which is funny because we were really active in the church at that point. I mean, we were. I don't remember if it was Logan or Blake. They were only 17 months apart, so it's hard to keep them apart. But one of the two of them, we brought them to church on their third or fourth day of life. It's just because, I mean, if nothing else, it was because it was a habit. We're just going. All right, and we enjoyed being there. We enjoyed being with the people, and we were in such a delicate spot that having that family and that community was really a blessing. But I remember the end of that year. I think it was Logan, because he was born in February. At the end of the year, we get the tithing notice, and at the time we weren't tithing automatically. We were actually dropping it in the plate. So you can pretty much tell our attendance by our tithing record. And we went 50 weeks that year, 50 out of 52 weeks. And I would, and so I would tell you that was probably a period where, if I was going to have the heartbeat, relationship with God that goes up and down, it probably would have been a low moment, not a high moment.
Yeah. Which is, yeah.
But also wasn't there because I needed something. It just was the right thing to do. And then Father Howard, in his way, I was walking down the hall one day, and he was meeting with the vestry in the parlor. And he said, "Hey, Leo, come in here." I said, "Yes, sir." And he goes, "How you enjoying church?" I'm enjoying it a lot. He goes, "Got you involved in a few things?" "Yeah." "All right, well, I'm gonna ask you to take on another role." And I said, "Okay, I'm open. The only thing I will not do is I will not ask for money. That's one thing. I'm not good at that. I'm not going to do it." He said, "Okay, I'll call you tomorrow." And he called me tomorrow, and he put me in charge of stewardship. And so Leslie and I led stewardship that year. And hey,
it was a great campaign.
We went from 763,000 to like 1.1 million or something. But that was also.
He's got that gift, man. You can see it in people.
And so that's a spiritual moment too. Is that the one thing I didn't want to do, God made sure He put right in front of me, right dead square in front of me.
That's my relationship with God.
Yeah. And so then that's cool too. Is at first I was frustrated by it, but I'm glad it happened.
Yeah, it's like this. It's frustrating. It used to piss me off.
Yeah.
But now it's like this. Like, okay, I trust. Like I see what you're doing. You're trying to make me better.
Yeah.
And I trust you.
Well, you're trying to. On that one, I think he was saying, "Hey, listen, man. If I'm with you, you got it. Just yield to it. Let's go."
You're naming another, for me, well, a couple things just through this conversation that I want to name, but like right there, to me, that's another language. What you named is like that community.
Yeah.
Like God, like for some people, they experience God's voice, God's language, God's love, whatever presence through other people, through community. And I think a lot of people don't. Well, I shouldn't say a lot of people. I certainly didn't understand that about church. It's definitely growing up.
Yeah.
I see it a lot more now.
Yeah.
This is actually like radically beautiful. Like
yeah.
This thing that is done together in this family, in this community.
I totally agree. With COVID, we quit going, and then Logan started playing weekend baseball, which literally we play 5 or 6 games every weekend, and we're in Virginia at 6 a.m. on a Sunday. Good Lord. But recently we've gone back a little bit, because COVID's over and they're acolyting. And it's just kind of cool to walk down the aisle and like say hi to so many people that literally just genuinely happy to see you, and they like, "Oh wow, the boys have grown up and they know everything about us. We know everything about them." Mm-hmm. That's a very cool thing. That's definitely a spiritual thing that we experience at Ascension for sure.
Yeah. I think it's something. Again, I gotta speak for myself. I think it's something I took for granted because I grew up in that.
Yeah.
My whole life.
Yeah.
Right. And I never realized just how powerful that is for people.
See, my experience was just the opposite. We went so rarely, and I went to school in Memphis, and we lived in Collierville, so we went to church in Collierville, so I really didn't know the people. So walking in, I really felt like an outsider. Yeah. And so there was no desire for me to be there. And now, as much as a pain in the ass it is to get up and get the family ready and go, you walk in the door and you're like, just like it always has been. It's never changed.
In a way, it's a glimpse back to like that DOK lady grabbing you. That's sort of a similar.
Yeah. And the anonymity of that one was was jarring.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it was on her mind.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, very clearly present.
Deeply. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, man. You got anything else you want to hit?
No, see, I told you, you're going to delete this one.
What are you talking about, man? That's, yeah, the only other thing I wanted to add that you sparked for me was that whole thing we've been talking about communion and the difference in when you can experience different things. And that's something that's always been beautiful to me is I try to hold it in my mind. And I've had some experiences with this before outside of church settings, but like giving communion to, it's actually John Rayson.
Yeah.
He was passing with his family there. But the idea that we hold up in our church tradition of like when we take communion, whether there's 2 or 3, it's the whole church, a couple of people, whatever, we're actually united with the entire like communion of saints that have gone before. And so like I don't know, for me like I try, it's hard when I'm doing it in church, but like I try to approach communion like going like when we're doing this, we are united in communion with people across the globe doing it all day right now today, but also just everyone who's gone before us.
Yeah, so my growing up experience with the communion, it was very a meaningless ceremony. It was just a ritual and didn't really mean anything. And the readings were always about the Last Supper, and so you're focused on that and all these things. It's a very different experience in the Episcopal Church. Very different. It's a, I mean, just the whole way that the words that are said prior to the whole pageantry of it, but the words that are said are really, really powerful. And I mean, it's you're there with not just God, not just your church, but yeah, the whole thing. And when that actually hits, man, it brings you to your knees, literally.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it, it sucks that you don't get to experience that as much as I do, because you're up there doing it.
Well, but
having a Eucharist minister come and just hand you a piece of bread.
Yeah. I appreciate that sentiment.
Yeah.
I think it's really sort of the same challenge. Like just like you guys in the pews, you're thinking things, you're doing things, whatever. It's the same thing. I'm thinking things, I'm doing things.
Yeah.
So it's not like some elevated challenge. It's and as I said before, I think as I've really sort of found my way and felt solidified in my ministry and just grown. Mm-hmm. I've been doing it for as many years. Like I'm much more able
to be in it,
to be present.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, so but I appreciate that.
What I'm learning,
but I'm going to take what you said because I have a deacon now, which is beautiful.
Man, run out there and run to the rail one day.
Well, no, I mean I can just have him serve me. I mean you're right. Yeah. But maybe not at the rail, but I can.
Yeah.
Because I currently serve myself. So
yeah. There's something really cool to me about coming to the rail. Again, my experience was you do it from the pew, and so that's coming down to the altar is a totally different thing, mm-hmm. and that's additive to me. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. Well, it's been fun.
All right, brother. Yeah, you good?
Yeah, I got to go back to work.
All right. Well, listen. Thank you so much for doing this. Like I said, you were on my list because I knew it would be a good one. Well, and plus I love you, man. You're one of my favorite people on the planet. I count you one of my best friends.
Me as well. Me too.
Appreciate you doing it.
Yeah, no problem. I enjoyed it.
When you get more stories, let me know. You come back on.
I will.
All right, brother.
Part 2.
Peace.